What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. And the New York Mets started their road trip off really poorly as they dropped their series to the St. Louis Cardinals. They'll be headed to Arizona next to face them, who they just dropped the series to at home. So weird the way the schedule is. It's like this multiple times throughout the season. But we got a lot to get into here as, like the title says, there's a lot of concerns that have definitely started to arise, and a lot of it is due to the fact that now the results aren't there. And on top of that, it's due to the fact that there are more injuries that keep appearing, and it feels like every single series now, the Mets have a body dropping at minimum. So we're going to talk about it all. Before we jump into everything, I ask that you leave a like on your way into the show, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you are Met fans, and turn on your post notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on Met Central. If you're commenting in the live chat right now, we will get to your comments and everything throughout the show. You're not being ignored. We are just trying to keep our conversation going and everything like that. So yeah, a rough series to say the least. I would ask how we're feeling, but I know that it's not great here. It's not great at all.
They're not playing well right now, and that's basically as simple as I can put it, like, without going into much detail after that, because as you mentioned, the concerns are definitely starting to rise with the in terms of, the main thing we've been talking about now for the last couple of podcasts, and that's with the lack of production with bringing in guys when they're in scoring position. And basically, this was the main reason why the Mets lost this series. Because, okay, you could point to, okay, maybe the starting pitching wasn't great. Because sure, Blake Tidwell didn't have the best of his first start here in the major leagues. Tyler McGill didn't pitch that well, but still, overall, maybe you could say the bullpen was a little bit shaky at times. But still, everything circles back to the point where the offense just keeps struggling in terms of when it's time to drive in guys when they're in scoring position. And this is the main reason, like I said, why they lost this series, because I haven't brought this up on the 2 post games that I did yesterday. This was basically a carbon copy of the Diamondback series at Citi Field, where game 1, everything clicks. Pitching was great. They're coming through with guys in scoring position. The bullpen was fine. And then the second game, they get average to bad starting pitching at best, and then they get guys into scoring position, but then it just seems like when they need that big time hit to either tie up the game or take the lead, they just can't get it. And then the ABs turn bad, and then again with the situational hitting where sometimes they need a sacrifice fly and they can't even do that right. It's just I get it. There's going to be plenty of ups and downs in terms of a baseball season, and this is pretty much like the first real, like, poor stretch that the Mets are having right now, and it's definitely frustrating to say the least right now because it just seems like just something is not clicking all the way for this team at this current moment.
Yeah, that's really the biggest thing here. And then like I said, the injuries that are showing up, which isn't going to help this lineup, which we'll talk about the latest injury later on in the episode. But it's really just infuriating how every series it feels like we're talking about the same exact thing. And this dates back to last year. This isn't anything new with runners at scoring position being a problem. And forget about anything else. This is why they lost the series to the Los Angeles Dodgers in the NLCS. Like, let's call it how it is. They couldn't get that big hit. Yes, the bullpen definitely had its struggles as well, but I have far more concerns. And even though the bullpen has injuries and has concerns right now, because a lot of gas is being, or a lot of mileage is being put on them early, I should say. But the far concern to me is the offense, which we'll read off stats and everything as we progress. But let's first talk about this series in totality and talk about how each game went down. So game 1, it was Clay Holmes versus Sonny Gray on the mound. And in the first inning, I mean, you see just exactly what we're talking about. Francisco Lindor gets a leadoff single, and then the Mets fail to drive him in. The bottom of the first inning, a leadoff double from Lars Nootbaar, and then he would be drove in by Mason Wynn, who would get himself an RBI single to make it 1-0. In the second inning, the Mets get the bases loaded, and Jeff McNeil would hit into a force out. Alvarez would hit into a force out, and then all of a sudden they have a 2-1 lead. The Mets would get walks from Acuna and Lindor, but unfortunately, they would be left stranded by Juan Soto, who goes down on strikes there. The bottom of the second inning, Clay Holmes settles down a little bit. And as we fast forward to the third inning, though, he did not have his sharpest stuff in that inning as he ends up allowing a couple of runs there. There was a stolen base, and then Alvarez tries to make the throw over the third, ends up going into the outfield, which scores a run, and then Contreras ends up getting an RBI single, which made it 3-2. As we go to the bottom or the top of the fifth inning, rather, Juan Soto would get a leadoff double, and then Pete Alonso would get a home run to make it 4-3, and the Mets would pour it on as Nimmo and Winker get back-to-back singles. Vientos would hit into a force out, and then Jeff McNeil would hit a single. Francisco Alvarez would get a single then, which ended up making it a 6-3 ball game. And in the seventh inning, they would pour it on a little more as Nimmo hits a home run. Taylor ended up getting a double, and then Alvarez drives him in to make it 8-3 with 2 outs. Acuna got a double, but unfortunately, that would not end up resulting in any more runs until the ninth inning, where Acuna ends up getting a sacrifice fly, which made it 9-3, and the Mets win the ball game. We go to game number 2 now, and you have Blade Tidwell making his MLB debut versus Erick Fedde in the first game of a doubleheader since the game got rained out the day prior, and for whatever reason they didn't want to do a straight doubleheader. They had to do a split doubleheader when the Mets have to travel to Arizona, which great work. Either way, though, top of the first inning, the Mets did score early. They had, with 2 outs, a double from Alonso, and then Brandon Nimmo would get a double to make it 1-0. We fast forward to the bottom of the second inning. Contreras would end up getting a home run as Blade Tidwell leaves a sweeper where you don't want to leave one, and that tied the game up. In the third inning, you get back-to-back hits from Soto and Alonso, and then Jesse Winker would get a sacrifice fly to make it 2-1. Nolan Gorman, though, would get a sac fly double play here to tie the game up at 2 in the bottom of the third inning. We would also see Jesse Winker leave the game, which, again, more on that later. And then in the bottom of the fourth inning, Blade Tidwell was just not able to put batters away, and he ends up hitting a guy, walking a guy, and then Donovan just gets a single to make it 4-2. Arenado walks. Contreras gets a single to make it 6-2. And in typical Mets way, they have to end up roping us back in, as in the sixth inning, Lindor hit into a force out that resulted in it being a 6-3 ball game. And then in the eighth inning was the ultimate tease, as you get a leadoff walk from Torrens. McNeil hits it to a force out, but Acuna and Taylor get back-to-back singles. Lindor then would get one to make it 6-5. Soto would walk, and unfortunately, Alonso and Nimmo do not come through, as it ends up being a 6-5 game there. And the Mets in the ninth inning, outside of a Vientos single, get nothing going. And then in the last game, you have Tyler McGill versus Andre Palante. Sorry. And then again, just similar type of game to the first game. The bottom of the second inning, a 2-run blast from Alec Burleson would make it 2-0. But the Mets would end up responding in the top of the third inning as they get back-to-back singles to lead things off from Taylor and Lindor. Soto hits into a force out. Alonso, though, gets a single, which made it 2-1. Vientos would walk, and then Marte makes it 3-2. Alvarez would hit a single to make it 4-2. But the Cardinals end up tying the game right back up, as just poor pitching from Tyler McGill resulted in a couple of back-to-back singles there from Arenado and Contreras, which tied the game up at 4. And the Mets had opportunities, just could not cash in, where the Cardinals, on the other hand, with Max Kranick in the game, cash in as they get a leadoff double from their third-string catcher, which, again, will tie into everything that we're going to talk about. Victor Scott gets a double to drive him in to make it 5-4, and the Mets just had no answers from there on out against McGravy, which ended up resulting in them losing 5-4. Your initial thoughts on everything before we jump into the heavy topics throughout the series?
I mean, kind of like I talked about at the top, right? I mean, again, it's the lack of runners in scoring position that's ultimately killing this team, because I mean, even like I have a couple stats right here, but this is from Tim Healy, and this was from after the game where they ended up getting swept in the doubleheader. But on the day, combined for the 2 games, the Mets were 6 for 26, for a batting average of 231 with runners in scoring position, 22 men left on base. And again, like we've talked about this before here on the podcast, but the Mets have plenty. They have lost so far a lot of 1-run games. And I mean, just from the stats, because this is from Wardy as well. So Mets have lost 13 games in the season so far. 11 of those losses, they lost by either 2 runs or fewer. And then again, you look at the stats from yesterday. Three in the second game, 3 for 11 with runners in scoring position, 10 men left on base. In the first game, 3 for 15 with runners in scoring position, 12 men left on base. Like
Could
this
I
is
just before you jump in,
yeah,
could I give a few more stats with runners in scoring position just
yeah,
to
yeah,
paint the picture a little bit more here?
yeah.
In terms of batting average, which we're not a batting average podcast here, but just looking at it, I mean 229 with runners in scoring position, which has them ranked 7th worst in the MLB and has them ranked 2nd worst in the National League, only ahead of the Rockies. And in terms of other teams around them, you have the Mariners, the Angels, the Royals, the Rockies, and then the Orioles there. The Pirates are even ahead of them. Just to paint the picture of how bad it is. I mean, they get walks at least with runners in scoring position. If you want to leave with something here, they get walks, but the problem is that some of these numbers even are inflated because they have these games where they just absolutely open the floodgates, but in these close games, they just don't get it done.
And the real problem is right now, it's like because when they're getting these opportunities, when they're getting guys in scoring position, a lot of the times it's the top 3 guys that are the ones that are getting on base. You know, Lindor's getting on base at a constant clip. Soto now is starting to get on base at a constant clip. We know that Pete's been hot. But the real big issue with this lineup right now, and we've talked about it before, and we've even brought it up yesterday in the group chat. But I know Nimmo's looked a little bit better, and Vientos has looked a little bit better since starting the season poorly. But those two specifically, when guys are in scoring position, whenever there's men on second and third, whenever there's bases loaded, those two just their plate approaches are just awful. And I mean, I noticed it with Vientos yesterday, and I texted in the group chat. I'm like, you know, Vientos right now is empty bases merchant because it just seems like, and I brought this up yesterday on the post game on the post game show that I did. But whenever Vientos gets up to the plate and there's no one on base, it just seems like he's calm up there. His approach is a lot better. He's hitting the ball hard. He's making good contact. He's finding spots where guys isn't. But then it just seems like when he's in an opportunity where he has to deliver with guys on base, and I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's just I mean, probably overall it is it's just a bad plate approach, but it looks like he's tense up there. It seems like every time he's getting into an 0-2 count, he's chasing bad pitches. He's taking pitches down the middle. He's missing pitches that he should be crushing. And it's just like it's so it's just so frustrating to watch because Mark Vientos is supposed to be one of these guys in this lineup where when the top guys get on base, he's supposed to be that big bat in the middle of the order that's supposed to help bring in guys. And this is what we saw last year from Vientos. And this is why the team down the stretch was such a threat last year because it just seems like every time Vientos was up last year in a big spot, he would just come through in a big spot time after time and time again. We even saw in the playoffs with the 2 home runs that he hit in game 2 against the Phillies in the NLDS. But now it just seems like I said, whenever he comes up there with guys on base, it just seems like he's lost up there. And I mean, we even saw it in the Diamondback series. We were there the second game of the series, no one on base. Hits a solo home run to put the Mets up 1-0. But then, as you recall, later in the game, when there was bases loaded and the Mets needed a sacrifice fly, what does he do? Bad approach, gets down 0-2, and swings and misses at a slider outside the zone. Game 3, again, second and third, 1 out. Need a sacrifice fly to tie up the game. What happens with Vientos? Again, gets down in the count, 0-2. Ends up chasing a slider low and out of the zone to strike out. And then obviously the Mets don't bring in guys to either, like I said, tie up the game or take the lead. And the same applies to Nimmo. Like I said, Nimmo's been a little bit better, but still his overall approach when guys are on base, it's not good. Again, it seems like he's going up there. And again, I hate the first pitch swinging when guys are on base. It's just like, especially when the opposing pitcher up there is wild and he's throwing balls and he can't seem to find the strike zone. It makes no sense to go up there and try to swing first pitch. And again, like we talked about before, that is not Brandon Nimmo's ideal play style. Nimmo's ideal play style is get up there, make the opposing pitcher work, either draw a walk, a light contact single to bring in a couple runners. Like, and listen, I get it. There was the National Series where he drove in 9 RBIs. He hit a couple home runs. Cool, I get that. But overall, that is not Brandon Nimmo's game, and we need him to get back to the play style that got him paid this type of contract in the first place.
Yeah, I think that as we progress, the conversation that we had earlier in the season might have to be reopened about shifting the lineup because, like you said, the top three, they get on, and these guys, these pitchers know if we pitch around them, Vientos isn't a threat right now because outside of that solo shot against Arizona, he has not had an extra base hit RBI since April 22nd against the Phillies. So we're approaching 2 weeks here since he has got an extra base hit RBI that doesn't include again his solo shot against the Diamondbacks, which I know you might say it's unfair to exclude that, but it's again that was a solo shot compared to guys on base, which is really where they need him to show up. But this is where the conversation has to reopen of spreading the love a little bit with the lineup and separating those top three a bit just to get something going, whether it's putting Nimmo in the 2 hole, whether it's putting Vientos back in the 2 hole, which is something that we advocate for the most of anything, or even putting Vientos between Soto and Alonso, just because of the fact that, if you have Soto in front to get on base, they might pitch around Soto and maybe Vientos gets more pitches to hit and he has Pete Alonso protecting him back there either way. So something has to give in that regard if this keeps trending towards the direction. We've already talked about the Chavez thing at nauseum. Like the Texas Rangers fired their hitting coach. I don't care what the Mets record is. I'm sorry. And this is going to annoy people to hear when they are first in the division, when they do have the record they do. But it's the conversation that we had with the Rangers when they had the record they did. It's the exact same conversation of there are glaring holes that if they don't get addressed, that record is not going to matter within a couple of weeks because you are playing better teams right now. Well, I mean, the Cardinals he should have beat, but the Diamondbacks, and you play them again, and then you play the Cubs, who are a really good team. These issues, if they are not addressed or fixed within these next weeks, that record could easily dwindle down more and more to where they are closer to 500 than being at the top of the division. And I'm sorry, but unless there's a change with the hitting coach or unless there's a change personnel wise with part of this lineup, you're not going to see anything differently. And this team is not going to hit the ceiling that we thought it had because you're not getting anything from Nimmo. You're not getting anything from Vientos. And then don't even get me started on the non-production you're getting from the DH position. I mean, there's absolutely nothing there. And then Jesse Winker got hurt now. So now you're relying even more on Starling Marte. Brett Beatty's called up. He's not going to add anything. And in terms of the DH thing, I just, for the life of me, cannot understand. So Jesse Winker plays the field in that first game, gets hurt. Marte ends up leaving, I believe, by the 4th inning in game 2 of that doubleheader. They say it was precautionary. So if he has, or it's to keep him from being on his feet the entire time. So if you're paying $20 million to a guy that literally all he is a platoon DH, he can't be here by the time July rolls around. Like after July, he can't be on the roster. You have no value with two guys that are clearly unathletic to the point where they cannot play the field and they're not even giving you good enough production as DHs. Why are they here? Why'd you go into the season with this platoon? I mean, I won't fault Stearns too much because he did go after Jock. He went after Teoscar Hernandez. So it's hard for me to fully, give Stearns blame in that department. But I can tell you right now, come July, one of, if not both of those two cannot be on this team because these guys cannot play the field and they're not giving you the production you need from your DHs. So what's their value here? And you're telling me that But you have to treat Starling Marte like it's a spring training game in game 2 of the doubleheader where, yeah, we got to pull him and put a Zokar in. If the plan was to pull Marte that early from the game, then, which by the way, in that game, even though I do not like Marte, he was 2 for 3 on the day. If you have to pull him that early in the game, then why was he even hitting that high in the lineup if a Zokar was going to be in the game? I just don't get it. I mean, Mendoza's had a lot of questionable decisions lately. They forced McNeil too much into this lineup by putting Acuna over at third base. And then, that ended up changing when Winker got hurt in that game. The depth of this team is just in serious question. I have no doubts with Lindor. I have no doubts with Soto. I have no doubts with Alonso. But I just, beyond that, I don't care about the record because you're not going to sustain it when this is what you're getting right now.
The thing with Marte just again, like it's hard to stay positive about him just because even like the thing like Mendoza brought up about him not wanting to, to keep him off his feet, right? It's not like he played a lot in both games of the doubleheader because if you recall the first game, he didn't even start. He came off the bench later in the game as a pinch runner. And I believe that was the 8th inning, I believe,
Yeah, and
or
we
maybe
didn't
the
get
ninth.
into that, and he doesn't steal a base.
Yeah,
And then the
and
next game he does the first time he's on.
yeah, so it's not like even in the first game he played a lot, and then the second game he goes 2 for 3. He had a couple of good at bats, and then you pull him in the 4th or the 5th inning because I don't know. The whole Marte thing, it just and again, it's the thing that you brought before where it's Marte again resetting the clock because he goes 2 for 3, okay, and then the next 6 games he plays, he's going to give you poor at bats where he strikes out. He's not going to give you anything. It's just again like why is stalling Marte here? And again, like you said, like you can't fault Stearns too much because again, he's not the one who gave out Marte this contract. Again, that was a Billy Epler signing in the 2022 offseason. And then Stearns tried to move him and they couldn't. I mean, there was supposed to be a trade in place with the Royals where they were supposed to get back Hunter Harvey, but I guess they just couldn't make the money work. So again, I can't fault Stearns too much with that, but just like with you brought up with the whole Winker and Marte platoon DH thing, like it's not gonna work. It's not. They tried this in 2022 with Ruff and Vogelback.
Ever since the DH
We
has been
saw
implemented in the National League, they've tried this.
we saw how that worked. If it fell on their face, down the stretch, and then come playoff time, and then again, like again, see the problem for me is I don't hate Winker. I think he could be fine as a bench option. Like I don't hate that because again he's only making $7 million. But when you're stalling Marte, you're making $20 million and you can't even play the field for a full game. And then again, you're barely giving any type of value in terms of offense on a consistent basis. Like sure, like I said, he'll have the good game here or there, but overall for $20 million, it's not good enough. And again, like you said, when July rolls around, one of these two guys can't be here. And again, that should be stalling Marte. We've seen them what they did in 2022 with Robinson Cano, where they just DFA'd him. And I don't think, and again, because we brought this up with the thing where it's like, in an ideal world, if Cohen had to make the decision to cut him and eat the money, I don't think Cohen would have a problem with that because I think at this point he'll do whatever it takes to win. It's just the point where you brought up because, and again, this is just like Ranger deja vu here with the fact that he's a good clubhouse guy. And listen, I get the fact that you do need good clubhouse guys in the clubhouse. We saw how it affected the team last year with having guys like Jose Iglesias and JD Martinez there. But at the end of the day, you cannot have a guy on your payroll and in your clubhouse being a quote unquote good clubhouse guy if he's going to make $20 million a year. That is just poor roster management and poor allocation of money. It's not because, like I said, $20 million, that is not worth it. I could go find a guy for $2 million off the scrap heap if he's going to come here and be a so-called good clubhouse guy. And again, it comes down to, do you want to win a World Series or not? You're not going to win a World Series with stalling Marte as your platoon DH. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, he's effectively making 20 million to be a cheerleader at this point. Again, like I'm tired of having the conversation and I'm tired that every time he does something every now and then in a game I get tagged And it's like, oh, see, you're holding on to something that doesn't matter because again, it's what you just said. He resets the clock every single time. And like I was saying, and sorry I cut you off before saying it, but ever since they've implemented the DH in the National League, they have not had a real DH. It was the platoon with Dom and JD. And everyone was like, "Oh, this will work. This is perfect for the Mets." It didn't work. And then you had Ruff, Vogelback, and even for a bit you had like Vogelback and then what was it, Pham in
Yeah, Tommy Pham,
2023.
yeah.
Like these aren't real DHs.
The only time they really had a proper DH was 2024 when they brought in JD Martinez. But even then, first half he was really good, and then the second half he fell off. So even then, JD Martinez wasn't even productive second half of the year.
Yeah, which that was another conversation we talked about at the time. How it's like they waited freaking way too long to get JD Martinez because that should have been something they did a few seasons ago. But I digress. That's neither here nor there. But either way, you're getting nothing there. Like these two guys, and even Winker. I'm sorry, but if this team gets a real DH, there's no value for Winker to make the occasional pinch hit every now and then. Sure, but I would hope this lineup is deep enough to where you don't need him to come in and pinch hit. And he's so unvaluable. There's no value there defensively to where, again, it's just a problem. Like you need power from the DH position, which was my problem this offseason when they failed to land Jock Peterson, who is off to a rough start. So I will, say that maybe it wasn't the worst thing there, but failing to land Teoscar really hurts, which that's not Stern's fault, like I mentioned before. And I have a feeling that there's a correlation there with them not landing either of those two, and that's why the Marte trade didn't happen. Maybe I'm wrong there, but that's what I would correlate that to. If I had to make a guess there. But either way, it's just what I've said. I said it last year. I said it during the offseason. They need power from that position. That's just what it is. And if they don't make a change there, nothing's going to matter. But even on top of that, like we have said at the top, Vientos and Nimmo have to be better. You need more consistency from the catcher position, especially Alvarez, who now's your time to break out. Now is your time. If it's not now, when is it going to be? Acuna's gave decent production from the second base spot. Taylor's been better as of lately. I'm not going to say anything about those two, and they're mostly here for their defense anyway. But then you have Jeff McNeil, who's just being forced in the lineup. And I'm sorry, but I look at three guys on this team and say, I don't think you win a World Series with these three guys on the roster, or at least two of the three on the roster, and that is Marte, Winker, and McNeil. I'm sorry, I just don't think you do.
McNeil offers no value to this team either. Because I mean, sure, like you could say that he could technically play multiple defensive positions out there, but really, when you look at it, how good is he defensively? Because the time again, he's made mistake after mistake after mistake in the field. Like again, he plays second base. Look what happened in the first game of the National Series, where all he has to do is keep the ball in the infield, and maybe the Mets end up winning that game. Again, how many times in center field does it look like he's kind of misplaying a ball? He'll still make the play, but overall he doesn't hit the cutoff man correctly. And then again in I believe it was the finale against the Diamondbacks where he receives the cutoff and he has I forgot who was running to third base, but he has Suarez. He has the easy out third base, and instead of throwing the ball to Vientos, he ends up hitting Suarez in the back, and it continues the inning. And then again, McNeil, his overall bat, it's because this is not 2019, this is not 2022 Jeff McNeil. His bat is not the same. It's just his bat is terrible. And then again, with the overall plate approach, how many times do we have to see Jeff McNeil go up there with guys on base and he's swinging first pitch? He's either grounding out or he's popping out lightly, and then it just kills the overall rally and the mood of the inning. It's like, and again, $50 million for him. And again, that's not Stearns' fault. That's a Billy Epler contract extension. And I would at least hope because at least with Marte, even if he's traded or if he's not, he's guaranteed to be gone next year because his contract is up. But with McNeil, like the Mets have to move him next offseason. And I think that they should be, I think they should be able to, just because at that point in the offseason, he's only going to have one more year at $50 million. And then I believe the next year is a club option. So a team, if they do end up trading for him, they could easily just decline the option on him, and then he would obviously go to free agency. But those two specifically, Marte, McNeil, they're holding the team back a lot.
And I'm so tired of, because I saw people were like, "Oh, well, people are hyping up Acuna when he has similar numbers to Jeff McNeil." When and where are those hits that Jeff McNeil is getting? It's like the Chris Kreider conversation where it's like, when and where are those points coming from? When and where are the Jeff McNeil hits coming from? And I'll agree that like Juan Soto needs to start hitting with runners in scoring position too. But you know what? I know that's going to happen at some point. Jeff McNeil, it's not going to happen. Like, that's not something that's going to happen because, like Matt said, his approach is just, let me first pitch swing when guys are on base to try and throw the pitcher off, and I'll just pop out to the infielder, ground out to first base, and then throw my helmet and throw a temper tantrum. There's no approach there from Jeff McNeil. Like, the context matters with these things. I don't care what his baseline numbers say unless he's getting it done when it really matters with runners in scoring position, which he is not doing. And just to go back to the Marte thing, just that whole thing in that first game where he pinch runs for Vientos. Why are you setting a pinch runner up there if the intention is to not steal a bag? I don't know if that was a coaching thing or a Marte thing to not steal there, but the fact that he didn't steal there, and then the first time he gets on in game two, steals a bag, it's like, why? Like, it would have tied the game in game number two if Marte actually stole the bag, advanced to third on that wild pitch, and then the sacrifice fly. But instead, no. Just this guy provides no value, and you get nothing from any of these guys that we mentioned before. So there's just so many concerns with that. I don't know if you want to talk any more about the lineup before we get to the pitching concerns that I have, because I could go on a tangent about that too.
I mean, overall, the thing like you brought up just now with the whole comparing McNeil to Acuna thing, it's comparing apples to oranges, because okay, fine, you could say maybe McNeil has the better overall baseline, but really when you look at it, it's not by much. 269 average, one home run, four RBI, 795 OPS. Acuna 298 average, no home runs, four RBIs, eight stolen bases, 724 OPS. Okay, fine, you could say McNeil has the quote unquote better baseline numbers, but when you add the context and you look at the amount of money both are making, Jeff McNeil is making $15 million a year. Luis Acuna is making $766,000 a year. And Luis Acuna offers you better defense, and he actually offers you speed on the base pass, where he could actually come in as a pinch runner, steal a bag, or if he gets on base, again, he could steal a bag and get into better position to score. So I'm sorry, while maybe McNeil has the better OPS by a couple numbers, Luis Acuna gives this team far more value than Jeff McNeil does.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not even a conversation. It's stupid that's even a conversation on Twitter, but it is. And it's also like the whole thing where it's like, but look at this guy over here compared to this guy on our team. Why are we comparing the guys on the team when you need both of them to just produce? Either way, though, the pitching front, because man, is there concerns with the pitching front. Questionable usage yet again from Mendoza on the pitching front, because in game one, I watched the Cardinals down by a bunch of runs, put Ryan Helsley in the game, but heaven forbid the Mets use Edwin Diaz in any of their games until the final game where we finally saw Edwin Diaz. Good to know he's alive, but it's just like Reed Garrett's used in that first game when they're down a run, but no, he couldn't be used in that Arizona game. Just remember that. The good news is Deadnell Nunez is back for the bullpen, so at least they get another high leverage arm back. But this bullpen, there's a lot of concerns. And then the starting pitching, once again, I mean, Clay Holmes at least gave some volume, but Tyler McGill, are we gonna get? Is this what it is? Now that it's May, it's over. The fun with McGill, um, which we've joked about over the past few episodes, but might not be a joke after that start there. Uh, it just again, you have so many concerns now with the pitching. Blade Tidwell made his debut, which we'll go in depth with a little bit, but just no volume from the starters, and then the bullpen. I mean, is a revolving door as of right now, which is also just very problematic.
Yeah, I thought Clay Holmes in that first. I thought Clay Holmes in the first start. I thought he was fine. I know he definitely started off a little shaky, and it was more that second and third inning where he just didn't kind of look sharp at all. He was kind of hanging a little bit of a sweeper, slider. I'm pretty sure he threw a fastball a couple times down the middle too, and he kind of just was giving up singles, was giving up hard contact. Obviously, gave up a couple runs in those early innings, but then really pretty much after that, he settled down. He gave the Mets some much needed value in terms of innings pitch. Obviously, he goes 6 innings before he gets taken out. And look, again with Clay Holmes, I'm not expecting Clay Holmes to go out there and put up Cy Young numbers. I'm just again like what we were saying before when we first brought him in, when we first signed him. If Clay Holmes could at a consistent rate just go every start 6 innings, anywhere around 2 to 3 runs or earned allowed every single outing, I will gladly take that. I will gladly take that. And it just seems like we were saying with every start with him, he's making a couple nice strides time after time after he makes each start. So with Clay Holmes, I'm not concerned with him at all. I thought he was fine apart from those from the second and third inning. Like I said, after that, he pretty much settled down, gave the Mets needed length, was getting outs at a consistent clip. And listen, it's good to see that Clay Holmes is making strides and he's turning into that under the radar gem that Stearns found. And it's good to see that again. The pitching lab is doing their thing, and they're making Clay Holmes into a very valuable second or third arm in this rotation. But then,
I just
you know,
wish with the with Clay Homestar, I just wish that the swing and miss stuff was there a little bit more. Like that was my only
yeah,
gripe there because he had 4 whiffs on 42 swings. So that's again the only thing if I'm going to nitpick from that start. Considering too that the swing and miss stuff has looked there for Clay Holmes, so I'm willing to chalk it up. I mean, at the same time, everyone in this series was every pitcher was struggling with that because of who the Cardinals are. So I'm willing to chalk it up to that. But I just wish we saw it, especially considering it's something we have seen from Clay Holmes as of lately, especially with the sinker improving.
yeah, no, definitely on that. But then, we go to the second game, right? And obviously Blake Tidwell makes his major league debut. So nice to see a couple of Mets pitching prospects come up and starting to make their debuts. Overall with Tidwell, if I have to think a final assessment, didn't think he was great. I also didn't think he was like awful either. I thought he was meh at best. And I mean, the thing that really kind of hurt Blake Tidwell, because overall I like this fastball. He threw that pitch the most 33 times, maxed out at about 98 and a half miles an hour. So was getting good velo on that fastball, was getting nice movement on that fastball at all. His the issue though was more of his breaking stuff, and that was kind of more holding him back because I thought the slider was okay. There was a couple of times where he did hang the slider, and obviously Wilson Contreras did end up hitting a home run on that pitch to top the game at 1 in that second game. But it was really more after the four seamer and the slider. Tidwell did not have that third pitch where he could just go to and be comfortable with it because I've said it time after time with pitchers. Like unless you're a guy like Jacob DeGrom, where your two pitches in a four seamer and a slider are so nasty, where that's the only type of pitches you can use. When you're a pitcher at the major league level, you need more than two pitches to work with. And like I said, and I brought it up on the post game that I did, that lack of a third pitch, that's what really held it back in the start because you could see with the Cardinals in their plate approach, once they could get past the fastball and once they were laying off that slider low and away, they just knew that he didn't have that third pitch to go to, and they knew that that they could either go, it's like, okay, he's either gonna go fastball up and in, or he's gonna go, slider low and away. And you saw it a bunch of times in that second game. How many times were, the Cardinals going after Blake Tidwell sliders? And to be fair, they were good executed sliders, but like a guy like Wilson Contreras or a guy like Nolan Arenado, they were just putting their bat out enough deep in the zone, and they were making light contact and finding the holes in the infield, to get RBI base hits, or just regular base hits as a whole. So really, like I said with Tidwell, and then you saw it as he got deeper into the start, his command started to go down a little
That's
bit,
what I was
and
about to say, and the velocity
yeah,
too.
the velocity started to dip. So overall, like I think there are signs with Tidwell. I think the Mets can turn him into a decent depth starter. It's just more the fact that he has to start developing like a third, fourth pitch, to just deepen that arsenal.
Yeah, um that and then the velocity maintaining throughout the start, because there were times he was like dotting up like 98 on the fastball. I'm like, holy shit, this kid is just he looks unreal. I mean, he even touched I think 99 at one point. Um, it's just again, yeah, the lack of secondary stuff and then just the lack of control just killed Tidwell. And there were times too where I thought he was executing the pitch as well. Just like you said, the Cardinals, they were sticking the bats out and just getting these bloop hits and stuff. And then the other thing too, I just with two strikes, he was never able to put hitters away. And it was very infuriating because it's like, all right, two strikes, he's up in the count. Come on. And he just can't put it away because they know it was one of those two pitches where he needs to start to actually tunnel the four seam a little bit more with the sinker, which we didn't see enough of, and really mix in the sweeper a little bit more, especially since I saw his card before that the secondary stuff grades out pretty well. So I was very shocked to not see him utilize that, which it's his first start. I'm not going to kill him. It will improve. And once he's fully ready, like we're going to see him mix the pitches better. So it's just, again, it's something that we notice, but it will improve. And like Ray saying, he's
Yeah.
21. Like
Yeah.
it's stuff that's going to improve. I'm not going to ridicule him for the way things went. It's just things that have to be improved on if he wants to be here down the stretch for the long haul, which he will be. I mean, we saw alone the stuff there and the tools that will make him be a serviceable starter one day. We just have to, see him put it together more consistently is all.
No, 100%. And like Ray said, overall, he's 21 years old. He's just a kid. I'm sure he was nervous making his first major league start. And like I said, like I didn't think he was terrible, but then like you got to be fair, he wasn't great either. Like we were saying, it's more of like the fastball was there, the slider was there at a couple times. Like I like those two pitches from him. It's just overall, he has to start incorporating more of the secondary stuff more to where he could tunnel, like you said, the four seamer with a sinker, and overall that would help him. So like I said, he's going to go down to AAA again. He's still going to marinate. Obviously, the Mets do have a ton of young pitching prospects right now in Syracuse. With Tidwell there, Sproats there. They just promoted Noah McLean up to AAA. Obviously, they still have Jonah Tong down there, I believe, who's pitching either at single A or double A right now. So the Mets do have a lot of young pitching talent there, and it's going to be exciting to start seeing these guys come up more and more later down the line and start to see them, being incorporated into the overall starting rotation. And then also we forget, Christian Scott right now, he's out right now recovering from Tommy John surgery. So that's another arm that the Mets have. So it's, exciting stuff with the young pitching development down there in the minor leagues. It's just like Ray said, he's young, he's going to develop. He's going to start incorporating more of a secondary stuff. I think overall, Tidwell, maybe he won't turn out to be, a top of the line pitcher, but he could definitely be a nice depth piece in this Mets
Middle of the
rotation.
rotation
Yeah, middle
piece
of the
ceiling,
rotation guy,
probably.
going forward.
It would be nice to see the pitching development translate to the hitting side of
Yeah.
things as well. But yeah, did you want to break down McGill's start?
Yeah. Tyler McGill, man. This is why I believe it was two podcasts ago. This is why I didn't want to fully believe yet, because we've seen this with McGill time after time after time again, where March and April, he looks like he's taking the next step. And then once the calendar just flips to May, it just seems like he takes a step back. Now, Look, I mean, the thing with McGill is maybe I could chop up to the fact that where because he was supposed to start the second game and that game ended up getting rained out, so he got an extra days of rest. So, and we know pitchers are weird. Pitchers are they're people of habit where they stick where they they stick to their schedule, they stick to their overall routines and their overall their strategy. So maybe the fact that maybe the extra day off kind of hurt McGill in the long run, I don't know, but overall, just if you just break down his main start in isolation, it wasn't good. Again, I thought his fastball was okay. I thought I thought he was locating it at times, and obviously there was a couple times where he just wasn't. But just overall, the thing that hurt McGill was his lack of control, and then again, like we brought up with Tidwell, the lack of secondary stuff. Again, that also hurt McGill in this start because we talked about it before, where the thing that was really propelling McGill and making him look like a better pitcher in those starts in March and April was his slider was really good. But then you look at this start again, his slider wasn't there, and then overall the swing and miss stuff wasn't there because the four seamer threw it 34 times, got 11 swings, four whiffs on that. That's pretty good. But then again, you look at the sinker, only 11 swings, two whiffs, slider, six swings, two whiffs, changeup, one swing, one whiff. He didn't have overall control of his pitches, and that's the main thing that hurt that, and that's the main thing that did end up hurting him in the start.
Yeah. It just it's so annoying. It's really just annoying how we're having this conversation every single year. Like we talked about with the offense with certain things. Every year, this is the conversation with Tyler McGill. And the thing that annoyed me more too is when Gary during the broadcast was just like saying a similar thing where he's just like, Tyler McGill, ever since he went down to the minors last year, like he looks like a different pitcher in a good way. And now all of a sudden, it's just like one step forward, two steps back with him. I'm sure he'll be fine the next start, but we need to see the adjustments that you mentioned where he does utilize the breaking stuff a little bit more, especially the slider, where it's just like your slider's been so effective all year. Why were you not utilizing it? To me, that was very bizarre.
Yeah, and then overall his other breaking stuff was poor too because he couldn't locate that changeup at all. The like I said, the sinker wasn't great either. I mean, he dropped the curveball in a couple times. I thought the curveball was fine. Yeah, McGill is back. I mean, listen. The thing with McGill is, listen, if McGill's gonna go out there now, his next 4 to 5 starts, and he's gonna put up similar numbers to what we saw in March and April, then fine. I could just chalk it up to a bad start because listen, pitchers in the majors, they're gonna have bad starts here and there. It's hard to give McGill the benefit of the doubt when we've seen this now for like this is like I think the fourth year in a row now where McGill started the season fine, and then once the calendar switches to May, he just completely drops off, and then like I said, one step forward, two steps back. It's really frustrating because it's like what we've been saying now for the last couple of podcasts. There's a good pitcher in there. It's just he has to put everything together, and it's so frustrating to watch.
Yeah. Um, and with that being said, do you have anything else you want to discuss for that series at all, or do you want to preview the series before we wrap things up?
I mean, I guess the only thing that I could probably bring up is again Mendoza's bullpen management because again, like I brought up at the start, where this series was so similar to the Diamondback series, and it's like again, like there's like the such drastic differences of how Mendoza managed the bullpen because again, in that second game, only down by 1 run, Reed Garrett was utilized in that outing. The game yesterday, only down by one before you head into before you head into the bottom of the top of the ninth inning. Edwin Diaz again. It's like again, if you're going to use Diaz and Garrett in those situations, then why were they not utilized in the Diamondback series? It doesn't make any sense. And again, we've questioned Mendoza's bullpen management and the whole process. It's confusing. I don't get it.
Yeah. I'm not gonna harp on it more than I already have. It needs to change. I'll leave it at that. But the series coming up against the Diamondbacks, who were just mentioned. In game one, you have Griffin Canning versus Ryan Nelson, which was supposed to be Corbin Burns, but he ended up getting injured. So they are going to avoid Corbin Burns for the second go around, which they had him on the ropes last time. But again, heaven forbid we get the big hit, right? David Peterson, results men versus Zach Gallen in game number 2, and then Kodai Senga versus Merrill Kelly in game number 3. I'm going to be the pessimist here. I'm going to say they drop the series again. It just seems like they are continuing to drop series after series. I'll say they win game number 1 and then drop the last 2 games because that just seems to be the pattern here on top of it. And could this just be me trying to reverse jinx and hope that I end up being wrong here? Yeah, I'll admit a little bit is that, but I'm just also not liking at all what I'm seeing from this offense right now. I'm not liking what I'm seeing from certain guys from the bullpen, even certain starters right now. So I'm going to say that they take 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 in this series.
Probably your logic is probably the best because knowing the Mets and how they've been playing, they probably should lose 2 out of 3 if we're being completely honest. I'll stick with the positive side. I'll say they'll win 2 out of 3 just because I'm hoping that maybe they'll make some adjustments. If I have to say which games they win, what game they lose, I'll say they win the first game. I think they'll drop the second game with Peterson on the mound, and then they'll win the third game with Sang on the mound. And the second game, that's the game I'm probably concerned about the most, just because we saw how well the Diamondbacks were hitting David Peterson in that first game, and how much the defense was bailing him out. So the fact that these two starts or these two series are so close back to back, and we've seen before, when series are back to back, and these hitters see pitchers more than once in such a close period of time, they get the second time usually goes off worse in terms of overall results. So, and I know David Peterson is a results man, and we know the David Peterson defense and how they bail them and how he bails them out constantly. But I just think that's the game they'll end up losing. And then, like I said, they win the first game and then they'll win the finale.
Yeah, hopefully you end up being right about that one because I want nothing more than to be wrong with this, and I want them to sweep the series. But
well, I was going to say because that's the thing now. I mean, like they had that 7-0 sweep of both the Cardinals and the Phillies on that homestand, and then obviously they dropped the they split the series in Washington. They dropped the series against the Diamondbacks. Now they dropped this Cardinal series. I mean, if they now drop this series in Arizona and then they play then they have to play the Cubs at Citi Field, and we know how lethal the Cubs offense has been this year. They're one of the top offenses. They're one of the top offenses in baseball so far. So if the Mets don't get it together, they could be heading down for a rough stretch. So they have to rebound and win this series in Arizona. It's crucial.
Yeah, they have to. Otherwise, the concerns will just continue to glare and continue to grow even brighter in terms of how much they need to be addressed. But yeah, that's going to be it for us. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.